So welcome back. This is the next video on Thomas Hobbes. Um, as you can see from his dates, 1588 to 1679. So he was a little bit younger than Descartes. I believe what were Descartes? Let's check that out real quick. It's slipped my mind. This is much easier. Let me look at my bookmarks. Yes. Yes. 1596 to 1650. So Hobbes is 16... let's see. $1588. Yeah. So, well, no, he's a little bit older than Descartes, but he lived a little bit longer. So Hobbes, what to say about Hobbes? You'll learn a little bit in obviously you've already watched the video, hopefully, on Thomas Hobbes. So you know some of the background about his living during the English Civil War. This is absolutely crucial. Let me just stress that to understanding Hobbes's political theory. Those videos are interesting, but also you have to read these texts kind of carefully and also be a bit more critical, perhaps, of these authors than I saw in the videos. Particularly, we'll see Locke. Locke is not as his political theory is not as wonderful as the video I had you watch. Perhaps makes it sound similar for Hobbes. You just have to get used to the fact that in the 17th century, people were used to very, very brutal governments, governments that often wielded more or less absolute power over their people. That could, at a moment's notice, the King of England, at a couple points, changed his religion and therefore forced everyone in England to change their religion overnight and began punishing people who did not. This kind of thing happened all over Europe. Many people did not have any rights whatsoever. The notion of human rights still did not exist. The idea that human beings should have some power, no matter insofar as they're human beings, that they should have any say in their lives. No, every bit of political power, of power in life, was tied to your social standing, to your ancestors and your family name and your place in the society. The only people that could perhaps move around were people who were either extremely talented, like Galileo and other people like that, or Descartes, or people who made wealth through trade. And then, of course, the wealthy didn't always have a very good source of income, and so they could make use of very wealthy people, and they had something to exchange, right? The politically connected and the noble could exchange certain rights and privileges with the merchants, and the merchants could give them lots of money. So they could have so aside from that, they were used to very brutal governments. So if the governments that Hobbes and Locke describe in certain ways are brutal and oppressive, okay, that is not something we should recognize and criticize, but at the same time we have to recognize that perhaps what they were looking for was much, much better than what was currently in existence. So here he is, Thomas Hobbes. He was notorious in his lifetime. He was thought of as an evil man by most people. That at some points he even had they blamed natural disasters on Hobbes, arguing that because he published Leviathan, the book of Leviathan itself, that we're reading, that God was punishing mankind for that. So there were some very negative reactions to Thomas Hobbes in his lifetime. The main reason, or one of the main reasons for this, is that he is a notorious materialist. He believes everything is made out of matter, everything is governed by mechanical laws. That is fundamental to his worldview. We'll see what implications that has for his theory. Also, his political theory takes that as its basis, and therefore it is not founded in revelation. Although we will see Hobbes talks about the church, and he believes in ecclesiastical power. He, however, brings it into alignment with political power in a way that would have absolutely been rejected by, for instance, the Catholic Church. Hobbes was also religious, but as you'll see, he doesn't talk about it much at all. And there's still many, many questions about what kind of religion Hobbes had, since he's a materialist and he believes all things in the universe are material. Presumably also God is material. How that is supposed to work, I don't think anyone quite understands. And Hobbes was very reluctant to talk about it because it could get him into trouble. So a very interesting figure in political theory. Everyone still studies Hobbes as one of the major sources of social contract theory. And his view of human nature is still very influential. Okay, so here is the frontispiece, the what would be printed at the front of the book of Hobbes's Leviathan. Right here we see Leviathan. We'll read through this a little bit, but let us first look at the picture of the Leviathan. This is the Leviathan. You see the land, right? It's the country. This is the king, the king's head. The king is the head of the Leviathan. Leviathan, by the way, is a sea monster that is mentioned in the Bible. I've seen the passages, I've read the passages where Leviathan is talked about. I don't know why Hobbes chose it to be it. He just refers to a large monster. And there's not too much on the Bible to really tell us much about that. But here is his depiction of Leviathan. First of all, notice, so the king with a crown, the head is normal. It's a king. But the body of the Leviathan, if you look closely, is made up of little people. The Leviathan is, as we'll see, an artificial monster, kind of. An artificial man. Artificial in the sense that it is put together of other men. It is a body, right? This is kind of a play on the term the body politic. This is the body, and it's composed of the people. In the one hand, we see this is a religious staff. So this is religious power. Interestingly, it is wielded by the state, not by a separate church. And this is of course, the power of war, the military power, the power of the king in the other hand, right? These are the two sources of power. They are held by the king, but by virtue of the people within him, okay? So let's look at the rest of this. You can see on this side, these are all secular, earthly sources of versions of what's over here in the church, right? So this is the earthly secular side, and this is the church side, ecclesiastical side. So whereas we have a castle here, right, with parapets and protection, right? These would still be built all over Europe during wars. This is where it's a fort essentially. Whereas kind of the fort on earth of God is the churches, right? The crown, symbol of the king's power. The mitre, I think it's called, but I'll have to look that up. The Pope's hat, which is a sign of religious power, right? The head of the church. The cannon, military power. The blast of the lightning, divine power. Weaponry that is used by the military, right? These are the weapons of the people who serve. And here we have the staves of the religious priests and bishops and so on, right? And they have some different names on their terms. Here is the cavalry, right, in the army, and here is what's called a meeting, sometimes called a diet, in the church, a meeting of church members, right? London, printed in 1651. Okay. So I'll just say a little bit here about the introduction and about Hobbes's general method. So let's go back to that first idea that I gave, which is Hobbes is a mechanist. He believes in that. What is a mechanist? A mechanist is a person who believes not only that all things are mechanical and are made of matter, perhaps, but that the matter, and this is what it really means to say it's mechanical, is that it's governed by certain simple laws. Like we would say inertia, the laws of impact, billiard ball hits another billiard ball. You can calculate the angles and the speeds with which they will emerge after they have contacted one another. They follow the laws of mechanics. That's what makes a machine a machine. It follows the laws of mechanics. So to be a mechanist, to be a materialist in Hobbes' sense, is to say there are some very fundamental laws, simple principles, that we can understand all other complex things out of. Remember I said he is in this way like Descartes. He believes in a deductive method. If you understand all the principles of mechanics, you can design machines, design computers, whatever. So he believes that everything in the world is like this. So he wrote a book. He wrote several books. In fact, his philosophical system was supposed to have a deductive structure. The first section was on physical bodies and the laws of physics that govern them. Another book on the structure of the human being. Now, the human being, unlike Descartes, and this is obviously you can see why he disagreed so much with Descartes, Hobbes, being a mechanist, doesn't believe in freedom of the will. He does not believe that human beings have souls in any notion, in the sense of an immaterial spirit. If we have anything like souls, it is some part of the mechanism in us, maybe a fine matter, something else. Everything is mechanical in the human being. And so if you want to understand, so that you see the first book is the laws of mechanics. The second book, when he deals with human beings and even the human mind, that's treating the human being as a complex machine. The mind, he says, is nothing but a mechanical calculator. That's all reasoning is, that's all thinking is calculating. This is one of his ideas, right? You can see how this would have an impact throughout all the rest of his theory. And in particular, after his theory of the nature of physical bodies and then of the nature of human beings, then we have his texts on the nature of government and of societies. And the laws of those societies are going to be dependent on the laws that govern human nature, just as the laws that govern human nature are going to be dependent on the laws of mechanisms. So you can see how that deductive system is structured. So let's just read through the first couple of paragraphs, and then that'll be it for this video. So the Leviathan, he says, nature, the art whereby God hath made and governs the world, is by the art of man. Notice the art of God is by the art of man. We'll see there's a parallel here. The art of man, as in many other things, so in this too also imitated, that it can make an artificial animal. So just as God's art, so artificial, just as God artificially makes and governs the world, so the man, using his art, imitates God by making an artificial animal. So just as God makes man as an artifice, so man makes another animal that's artificial. Now he's going to explain why he thinks that man can imitate God in making a kind of animal. And that is because, as we'll see, all that life is mechanism, right? So it doesn't require souls or any kind of magic or miracles or anything. So he says, for seeing life is but the motion of limbs, the beginning whereof is in some principal part within. So life is only the motion of our limbs, insofar as that motion is caused by an engine, some kind of motor, and directed from within our bodies, right? What distinguishes a living being for Hobbes from a dead being? Well, a dead being has to be pushed from the outside. We push ourselves from within, perhaps from the food we eat and so on. That makes us alive. But that's all life is. So life is nothing but the motion of limbs, the beginning whereof is some principal part. Why may we not say that all automata, like a puppet, engines that move themselves by springs and wheels as doth a watch, have artificial life? Why can't we say that they have artificial life? For what is the heart but a spring, and the nerves so many strings, and the joints so many wheels, giving motion to the whole body, such as was intended by the artificer? He leaves that ambiguous. namely by God or anyone else who would be the artificer. Art goes yet further, imitating that rational and most excellent work of nature, man. So we, with our art, imitate our own rational nature as a work, making a man ourselves. For by art is created the great Leviathan, called a commonwealth or a state, which is but an artificial man. So just as God creates men using mechanism, so we can, using our reason, construct and design an artificial man ourselves in imitation of God. That artificial man is the Leviathan, this great monstrous man, which is really just the commonwealth, right? The state, the government with all the people. Though of greater stature and strength than the natural, the Leviathan is much larger and stronger than the natural, for whose protection and defense it was intended. This is very important. It tells us that this artificial man we create, called the Leviathan, is for the protection and defense of the people within it. The sovereignty, the king, is but an artificial soul. Again, not an immaterial soul, one that's been constructed. It's artificial, maybe made out of springs and various things, as giving life and motion to the whole body. So the sovereign, notice he's going to say the sovereign is like the soul of the state. It gives it life and motion to the whole body. It directs everything. The magistrates, the people who work in the government and other offices of the judicature, right, other government officials, and execution, so the police and the judges, they are but artificial joints. Reward and punishment, by which fastened to the seat of the sovereignty every joint and member is moved to perform his duty, are the nerves. So reward and punishment are the nerves. That may seem a bit strange to you, but they thought of the nerves, Hobbes thought of the nerves, and so did Descartes, to a certain extent, as like strings that pull things in the body, right? Like a mechanical device, you might have a string, you pull it and it makes the arm move, right? That's what the nerves are like. So the nerves move. Today, if we said nerves, we think it like transfers information, right? That's not what Hobbes thinks the reward and punishment do. Reward and punishment push and pull the body's parts around. That makes sense. It pulls, reward pulls parts of the body to certain functions and directs them. Punishment pushes them. That do the same in the body natural. The wealth and riches of all the particular members are the strength of the state. The salus populi, the people's safety, is its business. Again, that idea, the goal, the intention, the business of it is the safety of the people. It sounds good. We'll see that that's a very important point for Hobbes. The counselors by whom all things needful for it are known and are suggested unto it are the memory. So the counselors to the king and to the state are like the memory in the human being. Equity, so it reminds them of things, right? That's the idea. The counselor reminds them of what the impact of certain laws might be or whatever. Equity and the laws are an artificial reason and will. So equality between human beings and laws are like reason and will. Concord, now this is what this comma does here is it signals you should fill something in. So concord is the health, like he's been saying all along, right? Equity and laws are an artificial reason and will. The comma meant like are is. So concord of the state is like the health in the human body. Sedition is like sickness in the human body. Civil war is like death in the human body. Lastly, the pacts and covenants, this is the contracts, by which the parts of the body politic were at first made, set together and united, resemble that fiat, the let it be, or the let us make man, pronounced by God in the creation. So the contract, the social contract, what he calls pact, or covenants made, are the things that they are parallel with the act whereby God made human beings, the fiat, the act of will by which God made human beings. So through that act, that fiat of the social contract, we make the Leviathan, that artificial man. Right? To describe the nature of this artificial man, I will consider first the matter whereof, what it's constructed out of, and the artificer, both which is man. So that's interesting. The matter of the Leviathan is man, and also the maker, the one who designs the Leviathan, is also man. Now this also is deductive in the sense that, remember, the first principles of his political theory will be the simplest causes and elements in the state, man. Secondly, how and by what covenants it is made. So this will be about the social contract and the nature of the social contract. What are the rights and the power or authority of a sovereign? What rights and power do the king have, and where do they come from? And what is it that preserveth and dissolveth it? So what supports and would keep in place the sovereign's power? What are the reasons for its power, and how long would they last? And is it possible that the sovereign's power should be taken away at some point or dissolve? And Hobbes' answer will be no, not at all, ever. We'll discuss why later. Thirdly, what is a Christian commonwealth? So as I said, the ecclesiastical Christian part of this is not lacking, but he is talking here about the power that should be held and should be dispensed in relationship to Christian doctrines and by priests and members of the church. Lastly, what is the kingdom of darkness is. We won't talk about that at all. Okay, that's all I wanted to say in this video, so see you next time.